had a couple of people were bleeding from their ears. There was one of them just sat down on the road and was, just emotionally devastated over this thing. They were just, really kind of scared to death. The witness had severe trembling, nausea. In fact, she had patches of white hair that appeared that hadn't been there before.
Welcome to High Strangeness, where we ask questions and explore all that is strange and unexpected in our reality.
All right, we are today talking with our friends from MUFON down in Florida, and we've got on the line with us today Matt and Rusty. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great, Tony. Thanks for having us.
Really excited to have you on today. Florida is a great place. Many people think so, some not, but it is a cool place that a lot of people think of, beaches and all that. But there's UFO stuff going on out there, UAP, and we're going to get into whatever's happening over there. So what part of Florida are you guys joining us from today?
Well, I am on the west coast, just north of Tampa a little bit, and then Rusty's not too far away from me.
I'm in Brandon, Florida, right next door to Tampa.
So I've heard that west side of the state there has some of the best beaches, the white beaches. Is that true?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, incredible.
That's good to know, because I keep thinking my kids keep, they're grown up now, but they like to go back to Orlando. And I'm like, can we check out other parts of the state too, right?
Yeah, we have great beaches.
Yeah. So I have one daughter-in-law who gets freaked out. She says, I'm afraid of alligators or crocodiles, whatever. And I lived there when I was a kid for a bit in Florida. And I'm like, well, they are there, but just, you can tell where they're at. So, kind of stay away from them. But you guys, how long have you been in Florida?
I've been here off and on for about 20 years. I was on active duty with the Coast Guard when I moved here in 2005, and then I'd transfer out, transfer back in, and then I ended up, staying here. So I guess technically since 2005, so 21 years. So
Yeah.
I've been here for 12 years, moved here from Chicago. We were sick of the cold winters, and my husband got a job transfer, so we said, let's go. We were done with the cold.
Yes. You know what? That's a thing that I have too. I'm getting sick of the cold more and more every year. So I do have a place down in the southern part of the state, but I did that specifically because of the cold. Can't stand the cold. Okay. MUFON and out there in Florida, you guys keep pretty busy, don't you? So what makes Florida such a unique geography for sightings and UAP and that sort of thing?
go ahead, Rusty.
Yeah, go ahead. We're surrounded by water, so we have a lot of over-the-water sightings coming out of the water and then coming down from the sky. So I believe that is in our interest. And then there's military bases all over. So to me, those are the two biggest things that attract a lot of UFOs.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, surrounded by water, military bases seems like two hot spots right there.
I would say too. I mean, our weather down here is great year round. I mean, we've had a kind of a cold winter. I mean, it gets down in the 40s, which it's hard to complain about being in the 40s
man.
when they're, way worse, just a few states north of us. But, the weather's great year round. You've got, tons of people that are coming here on vacation. Actually, in season, this is like the height of the season because everybody is, coming down to escape the cold weather. We got spring breakers coming down. And so, the environment down here lends itself to, people being outside 24/7. The weather is usually really, really good, nice clear skies, and I think it's just the amount of people outside at night looking at sunsets, they're looking at all the Florida stuff. And, if a UFO pops up, then there's lots of eyes on it. So
Yeah, that makes sense. And the airspace out there is pretty busy too, right? I mean, you guys have, because of tourism and just other things, it's pretty busy out there as well.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, steady stream of flights coming and going.
Yeah, but
yeah,
Matt does have a big point there that there's people all year round outside here and sky watching.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
So that's probably why we get a lot of the reports.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think as far as statistics go, Florida and California, Texas and Pennsylvania are pretty much the top four states for sightings. And usually, I mean, we're at the top at one or two most of the time. I mean, we kind of fluctuates a little bit, but between California and Florida, one of us is normally on top for monthly sightings.
Yeah. Now, do you see any, I don't know, reoccurring patterns or just things like that with the sightings that are basically submitted to you guys? Are you seeing like, oh, these are 90% from the water, or are these some other high percentage from something?
Um, yeah, I mean, we we go through these phases where we get a lot of different types. So I mean, we had this period where we were getting a lot of black triangles. We get a ton of like chrome spheres, and I'll get into a couple of those cases because there's a few of them that have just popped up in the in the news recently. So yeah, not so much these days. The classic disc shape, circular, chrome saucer, kind of thing. It's as far as daytime shapes, I'd say, black triangles and chrome spheres. Um, I don't know. What do you think, Rusty?
I would say that, and then we get a lot of orbs. There are so many orb sightings.
Hmm. Now,
Yeah.
the orb sightings, are you seeing, or maybe this is all over the place, but are they more plasma type? Are they more metallic or translucent?
I would say that the ones that are reported mostly would be translucent and plasma style. Orange,
Yeah.
some are white, some are blue.
Yeah, we get multicolored for sure. I think there's like kind of like a differentiation between like there's orbs that kind of are ground level type events, and then there's lights in the sky or orb kind of thing, and I've kind of after doing this for a few years, and in a lot of the literature, and I think it was either Hal Puthoff or James Lakatsky. I think I remember hearing an interview or reading, about what their thoughts on how these craft operate, and I think the kind of the consensus with these physicists that are trying to figure this phenomenon out are that these craft are real. They're nuts and bolts, like not necessarily nuts or bolts,
Yeah.
but they're physical craft. But their means of propulsion means that they have to form a kind of a warp bubble around them that they surf on, and so that bubble that surrounds the craft, when you see it from a mile off, it's like a glowing orb or a ball. But then, and Rusty and I are both on the experiencer team, and we've had several experiencers that have said, hey, at a distance, this was a glowing orb. And then when I got closer to it, it turned into a silver disc. So,
Interesting.
yeah, so I think a lot of the times, these things that we see at night that are making like 90-degree turns and all these crazy maneuvers, from a distance, they're lights. And a lot, people always say, why does a UFO need lights? I mean, it's like, they're, do they really need navigational lights kind of thing? But I think that what people are seeing is that, aura, or, that warp bubble that's like, that's glowing. And then inside of that is the actual craft.
Yeah. reminds me of the cube surrounding the orb right there on the Atlantic coast, I think, right?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
I think it was a cube in a sphere, I think, with the
Yes.
corners of the cube, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rusty.
Oh, I was just going to say, in the book Eminent by Lou Elizondo, he has a whole chapter on how Matt's describing it. It's
All
very
right.
interesting. I've read that chapter probably 3 and 4 times. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
It is, and and I'm going to divert here for a second because it's making me think of this discussion of just something that for those who've watched the Skinwalker Ranch show that's here in Utah, there's a time or two where they're seeing orbs move through different things, which gives it that transmedium type of thing, but in some cases, even through the mesa. So it really makes me wonder how it's able to really alter or push aside matter the way we understand it. It's just really weird.
Right.
It's really
I always think about the aerial school in Zimbabwe in 1994. I think it was September 16th. I think it was Randall Nickerson, and actually we had him as a guest with us here in Florida a few years ago. But in his film Aerial Phenomenon, one of the school children, when they were interviewing them, and I think this was not the later ones, but the interviews that were done right after the event happened. And I remember one of the school children said that when the beings got out of the ship and started walking toward them, that they had a really strange way of walking where they would take a few steps and then it was like somebody hit a rewind button and then they would back up and then they would like take the steps over. And I've always thought about, we're just talking about that warp bubble around the craft that, so if time and space are different on the inside than, from the outside, then, a being walking from inside that space to outside of the space, might go through some kind of like time dilation or something. And then that would explain the weird movement as they were, exiting the area.
like
And then,
like a glitching almost.
right,
Yeah.
right, absolutely. And that warp bubble theory also explains, how these things can make incredible maneuvers, like they make 90-degree turns, thousands of miles an hour, stop on a dime, make a 90-degree turn and shoot off in the other direction. From the outside, that looks impossible, but it's possible that, hey, that craft on the inside of that bubble is operating at a relatively normal rate of speed, coming to a nice slow stop, stopping, and then making a 90-degree turn, and then gently going off, in the other direction. But from our perspective, it's instant.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and it actually reminds me in a different way of some claims that have been made about the dimensionality within these orbs. So, like, where somebody will say inside this small space, it looks like it was the size of a football field inside there, which is its own craziness. My gosh, it's like, what in the world is going on in these spaces?
right, yeah, I can't remember which one of the whistleblowers, but it was somebody that claimed to be on the inside of the program, and that they said that these scientists that would go into these recovered vehicles, it definitely on the inside was bigger than the outside. But the other thing that got me was these scientists that were doing the research. They would go in for, like a half hour, and then it would be days had passed,
Yeah.
and then they come out and there's all these weird time shifts. So
Yeah, and in some ways, it makes me wonder if it's almost like we are all stopped in space, like just standing there, frozen, but really we're not. But because of the speed, just normal things are going by us all the time, but we don't even recognize it. It just seems like that could be a possibility.
Yeah.
yeah.
It also kind of reminds me, I don't know if you guys believe all this stuff, but like the Miami Mall incident, I've seen some of the videos of the creatures kind of glitching in and out, and I don't know, that's kind of weird. Like
Yeah.
the way they were moving around. I thought that was really strange too. It kind
Yeah.
come out reminds me of that.
Well, it would almost lend some people to think of that whole matrixy type of
Yeah.
thing. Some people actually believe that we're in some kind of a
Yeah,
matrix or something.
hologram. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Me
crazy.
too.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely makes you think about, you know, people that study consciousness, and you know, we have all the, we have all these scientific answers, but yet there's no real, good model of what is our consciousness. How do you put a scientific measure on somebody's soul? And
Right.
so it's yeah, there's a lot of things. I mean, there's a scientific explanation for everything. It might be spooky and weird for us, but whether it's ghost or whatever, there's a science behind it. We just probably don't understand any of it.
Yeah. And one of the things that my belief with all the different things I talk to and people is I believe a lot of these phenomena cross over. And there's a lot of kind of like a tapestry where things cross over. And because you see similarities in different things. And, years ago, people were siloed looking at one thing. But I think people are starting to be more open to, different areas and saying, well, why is there orbs and flashes of light with cryptids or Bigfoot? And why are
Right.
there orbs with hauntings? And then all of a sudden we see them surrounding something else. It's very interesting.
It is. I actually started a map probably about 6 months ago where I was doing some data research of UFO sightings at the same time that Bigfoot sightings were seen, going on our databases and then NUFORC, and then I forgot the name of the Bigfoot database, but I was pulling from that and it got really interesting. And
Yeah.
then our chief field investigator, mine was really generic, by the way. Our chief field investigator does these incredible maps and spreadsheets, and he showed me something he was working on. I said, I'm done.
Yeah.
But it is very interesting because there is some data that points to
Right. And then Rusty and I, like I said, we're both on the on MUFON's experiencer team. So we're not only do we do the nuts and bolts investigations, but then we also work with experiencers, that have had contact events and abduction events, that kind of thing. And with without exception, pretty much, the experiencers that I've talked to, and I'm sure Rusty has similar stories. They always tell me, besides the abduction event, they have poltergeist activity in their house. They have orbs in their house. They have all of these weird, unexplained coincidences. It's kind of like it bleeds over into the paranormal realm. Really weird. And I mean, even, I think it was Whitley Strieber that said that on one of his abductions, he met a friend of his that had passed away on board the UFO. So yeah, there's definitely a bleed over.
there is.
Yeah. It
The
really makes
hitchhiker
you.
effect.
What was that?
The hitchhiker effect, I keep hearing that term lately. Um, it's a thin veil what we're in, so it's
Yes.
it's so interesting.
It really is. And it just, I think, will keep us going for a long time because it just, the more questions you think you're answering, you just opened up five more questions.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
amazing.
It consumes me.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it does for a lot of us too. We're pretty much obsessed.
Well, we were talking a few minutes ago about just even some of the weather going on there in Florida. And I remember as a young person, quick, fast, heavy hitting storms that would go away pretty quick in some cases. Do you think weather and those types of reactions of the atmosphere can actually generate portals or generate different things that activate activity for sightings or things like that?
I mean, I think it's plausible. I mean, these thunderstorms. Florida is like the lightning capital of the world. I mean, pretty much during the summer, there's not a day go by that you don't hear a rumble. And I mean, you're talking about a lot of, electrical energy that is just floating out there, ready to, find the, find the source to ground. And yeah, I think that could have something to do with it. I don't know. What do you think, Rusty?
I think it's really possible. I know we're not talking about cases yet, but I will forget about this one. Okay, on the west coast of Florida, and it was around Sarasota area. There was a storm a couple years ago. It was a hurricane, and it was just beginning. And the people who lived in this house on the canal, they went outside to film, and there was a blue orb under the water, and it was really bright. And it wasn't the time where you're going to be in the water. So whatever it was very, very strange. They reported it to MUFON, and the storm was turning quite violent. So we don't know what it was, but it was very weird. Just going by and then by the dock and then out again, and it would disappear, and then it was gone. But the guy and his family were recording it, and it's something that I think of every now and then when we're talking about UFOs and storms. I can't find the video though. I was looking for it. It might have been closed as something else if it was, maybe it was not closed as an unknown. Sometimes when we close them with other dispositions, it might be an unknown, but it also is maybe the person stopped communicating with MUFON or they reported it through a friend or something. Then we can't really say it's an unknown, but that was a video that I remember that I was like, wow, nobody's going to be under the water with these lights. Like we have these lights in Florida that you can go diving down for lobsters and stuff, and people hold on to them and you dive down in the night or get your crab baskets and stuff. This wasn't that. There was nobody in the water at that time.
Yeah.
It was about dusk. It wasn't dark out yet.
Hi, did you know High Strangeness is looking for you? If you've seen something strange or experienced something, we want to know. Go to this website and the email address or leave a voicemail message. Thanks, and let's get back to the show.
Yeah, I mean, I know whenever I see something really intriguing online, not necessarily with the MUFON, within our database, but I always try to download it immediately because I can't tell you how much stuff disappears. Like you see it once and then it's gone, and then it's almost like, man, am I imagining things? But it's just gone forever. And I think a lot of that stuff gets scrubbed. Maybe who knows? Maybe the government's doing it. Maybe they're doing it. The phenomenon.
Yeah, somebody's doing it for sure, though.
Yeah,
because
for
these
sure.
things are disappearing. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
That's crazy. One more question about Florida, and then let's get into some cases. So one of the thoughts I had was, or the questions I had was, with the level of just the different individuals that you have, whether it's transplants that have come over or just people that are visiting, that are tourists and stuff like that, do you see, like just a difference in the way people are reporting things? So what I'm thinking of is, like, for instance, maybe your tourists are more focused on things in the air, or maybe your retirees are more focused on things that they see when they're sitting in their backyard. I'm just curious if you're seeing any trends like that with some of the people in your state.
Yeah, I know we certainly do get a lot of tourists that make the report. They may live in Kentucky or somewhere up north or in the Midwest, and then they'll make the file a report with MUFON, and then we end up calling somebody in another time zone to to review their sighting. But as far as trends like residents versus vacationers, I don't know. I do know that for the people that live here, we have these rockets going off on the other side of the state, like, all the time. And I'll tell you what, even the people that live here, we still get reports from them. But I'm sure, like, if you are from the Midwest and you've never seen a rocket launch at dawn, it's pretty spectacular because that they call it the blue jellyfish. I mean, it lights up the entire sky. It is just the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. And if you're not, go ahead, Rusty. I'm sorry.
Jubilant cloud.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is absolutely spectacular, and typically we do get a lot of rocket launches reported, and then they're fairly easy to, all you have to do is look at the metadata on the video and look at the launch schedule, and you can, it takes like 5 minutes to solve those cases. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to the people that might be tourists out there, don't stop reporting these though, because just because you think, oh, it's probably something that they see all the time, maybe it isn't.
I know, and
So,
we want the
yeah,
reports to come in. So
yeah,
if anybody out there right now came to visit Florida or anywhere, please report your sightings, even if it's 30 years ago and you don't have a video. We want to hear it.
yeah.
yeah, and honestly, we don't even need a video. If you just witness something, the human brain is a pretty complex computer. Just report what you saw. We don't need a photograph. We don't, need a video. I mean, it's nice. It's a nice piece of evidence to have. But just report what you saw.
Yeah.
And I mean, some of the best cases that I've had don't have any video or photographic evidence with them.
Yeah. And if they're recent enough, they could be corroborated with other sightings and stuff.
Yeah.
So,
And they can
And
draw pictures too.
and don't assume that somebody else will report it, because they probably are not going to do that. So
right. Right. Do it. Don't put it aside. Do it.
yeah, absolutely. We would much rather get practice investigating a known than to miss something really important because somebody assumes, oh, that's probably just a plane or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, these are all the things about Florida that people might be curious about. But now we're going to get into whatever you guys want to get into. I know there's just a bunch of stories from the past, from current, whatever, and you guys know those things that are interesting. So please feel free to share and take us where you want to go.
Who wants to go first?
You can go first, Matt, since you have more than I do.
Okay, I tell you what, I'll go over some of these some of the military cases that I've been diving into, and then we'll swap over, and then I'll close it out with a couple of more recent cases. How about that? All right. So let's see. I'd like to start off with let's see. Well, first of all, let me just explain this. I did retired from the U.S. Coast Guard, so I've been my whole career was in the military, interacting with other military branches, and so my heart is really into that realm. So recently we've started to get reports from military members that were on active duty back in the 60s and 70s. So now that puts them in the 70 to 80 year old age range. And they're starting to talk about the things that they were told not to talk about, back in the day. And so I've done a deep dive on some of Florida's really exciting, military-related cases. And, a few years ago, December 2017, when Leslie Kean's New York Times article came out and blew the lid off of this thing, it really centered around these three videos: the Tic Tac from the 2004 Nimitz encounter, and then there's the Go Fast and Gimbal. I think those were with the USS Roosevelt off of the east coast of Florida, 2015. But when I'm going back through our database and through MUFON's database, and I'm finding very similar incidents that go back 50 years. So I just wanted to highlight some of those really incredible cases. And the one I'll start with is MUFON case number 54309. So this happened on March 31st, 1967. And it involves two U.S. military operators, one with the 644th Radar Squadron in Homestead Air Force Base, and the other at the Army Air Defense Battery in Key West. And they're about 100 miles apart, but their systems were both linked together, so they were seeing the same thing. So that night, March 31st at 10 p.m., Canadian Air Defense started tracking these four targets, radar targets that were heading down the east coast all down the eastern seaboard, doing about 5,000 miles per hour, which we don't have anything. I mean, I guess there's hypersonic missiles and stuff that could do that now, but back then, even the fastest aircraft, the SR-71, was nowhere near that fast. So Canada Air Defense was tracking this. They turned it over to NORAD, and in turn, NORAD turned it over to Homestead and to Key West radar, because these things were headed to Florida. So the Homestead radar operator, when they got closer to Miami, the Homestead operator started seeing that they had slowed down to about 1,500 miles an hour. They kind of settled in an area offshore, off of Miami. And then for like 4 hours, they were doing like kind of a search pattern or grid pattern where they, and it kind of reminded me of what David Fravor said during the 2004 Nimitz event. He said that this Tic Tac that was down on the surface of the water, he said it was moving so erratically, it was like you put a ping pong ball in a plexiglass box and shook it. And I couldn't help but think that that's kind of what these craft were doing. So NORAD launched these 2 Marine Corps F-4 Phantom jets out of Boca Chica, and they flew up and started to engage with these things. That people on the ground and all over South Florida saw these and were reporting them. So when these jets would get close to them, they would shoot up and disappear, and then as soon as they would turn around, they would come back down and continue to do their grid pattern. About 2:00 in the morning, these things stopped. They were joined by 4 other craft, and then they started heading south. So when they got closer, they passed right over Key West. And as they were approaching Key West, the radar operator there said that his headphones started ringing, like buzzing, like a loud whining noise, and all of the radar shut down. So one of the guys went outside and looked up, because these things are just right on top of him, headed south. And he said that it was like a fireball, like a meteor. He only saw one of them, but it was just traveling laterally. It wasn't coming down. It was just like straight and level as it passed over. And the story really doesn't end there, because a few years after that, it came out. This was just, I guess, classified, at the time that it happened. But there's the story about this Cuban MiG-21 interceptor that disintegrated in flight chasing a UFO. Well, lo and behold, you know what the date on that was? April 1st, 1967. And so that was the same day, because there was a 4-hour event for NORAD from 10 o'clock on the 31st to 2 a.m. on the 1st. So same day. So I can't help but think the two aren't related. So that's my first one. Really interesting.
Well, let me ask you a question before you move on that. Did you say that last jet it disintegrated? Is that what you said?
Yeah. So what the Cuban pilot reported was that they were in pursuit of a UFO, and the lead aircraft disintegrated, and the trailing fighter jet broke off and returned to base. And during the briefing, that pilot said that they were chasing this UFO, and so I believe the Defense Department had an explanation that it was actually an A-12 or an SR-71 variant that the CIA was using to do surveillance over the island, but those planes don't go 5,000 miles an hour, and they certainly don't have any weaponry that would disintegrate a MiG.
Yeah.
So,
jeez.
Yeah, it's a great story. So
that is, and one of the things I love about the fact that you're bringing up something back then. Sometimes when people are newly looking at UAP, I know you've heard this. I've heard the statements from people like, "Well, it's probably just, our technology. And I'm like, yeah, but back in the 50s,
Yeah,
doesn't fly back then, right? That's a whole different scene. So thank you
yeah,
for sharing that. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So I'll be a little bit quicker with this one, but
Oh, you're
yeah.
good.
So this next one is MUFON case number 58305. It happened July 15th, 1975, and the location was 18 miles south of Panama City Beach. So there were these two brothers. One was a retired Army officer. One was an active duty U.S. Coast Guard officer. They were out in their 18-foot fishing boat, fishing. They were 18 miles offshore, just south into the Gulf, and they were fishing about 100 feet away from this U.S. Navy undersea research platform. So if you can imagine, there's like a submerged habitat. But then there's like a tower on stilts built right next to it. So, the researchers that are spending all the time underwater, they can easily surface, climb up onto the tower. They probably have beds and showers and all the luxuries of, dry land up there. So they were fishing near this U.S. Navy research platform. Out of nowhere, these two silver classic saucer-shaped discs pull up, hover right over top of the platform. There was actually one of the Navy divers was climbing down the tower I guess to get into the submerged portion. And when this happened, he climbed back up, and for about 30 minutes, these two discs moved around in unison. They never got any farther apart. They were glued together. They went about a mile south. They did kind of a grid search again, and then they came back and they hovered back over the platform. At this time, there were a couple of U.S. Air Force F-4s that were coming to intercept them. And as soon as they got close, these two craft made a 45-degree angle departure, and they were gone in like 2 seconds. And then a second after that, these two F-4s came in full afterburners and did a climb to try to catch them, and but it was gone. So, but it goes back to the reporting source for this was an active duty U.S. Coast Guard officer. So, yeah,
Amazing. I love the fact that these service people are coming out now. Like they're like, enough already. I'm not going to die with this on my mind. I'm going to share this stuff. That's wonderful.
yeah. All right. Let's see. Next one is case number MUFON case number 64758. This happened on June 6, 1973, and it involved the USS Independence off the East Coast. So this is kind of the same area where the USS Roosevelt was, filmed the gimbal. So keep that in mind when you're listening to this. But this happened about 1 a.m. There was the reporting source was a refueling technician aboard the aircraft carrier on the flight deck. He said 1 o'clock in the morning, the flight deck was just suddenly illuminated like it was daylight, and there was a light in the water that was next to the aircraft carrier. This thing matched the speed of the aircraft carrier that was underway. It accelerated out in the front of the ship, and then it raised out of the water, and they saw that this thing was an actual craft. It stayed there for about 5 minutes, matched the speed of the ship, but just right off the bow, maintaining the position while the ship is going forward. At some point, it did a 360-degree loop around the ship, and then it shot off, never to be seen again. 5 minutes after it happened, the commanding officer came over the intercom and said, "Gentlemen, what you have witnessed did not happen. You are to keep quiet. It did not happen." So,
Of course.
yeah. So now it's coming out now. So this one is this was a case investigated. Actually, there's no investigation on these historical reports because we're just listening and basically documenting this case. But
Yeah.
so this report is case number 112909. It happened May 30th, 1979, and this was the field investigator on this was David Toon. He is he's kind of like our rock star field investigator here in Florida. He was the chief investigator for the longest time. I think he teaches courses over at Embry-Riddle now. So he's still an investigator with us, and this is one of the cases that he looked into. So May 30th, 1979, was the USS Recovery. It was 200 miles southeast of Miami. This is reported by a Navy seaman who was on the Lookout Signal Bridge, which is the platform just above the bridge. It's usually the highest point on the ship, where a person can go and without having to, use climbing gear, kind of thing. So this ship was the USS Recovery. It was trailing a Russian fishing trawler or spy ship, and it was just off the bow. And they noticed that this Russian spy trawler, all of a sudden the lights came on and they were flashing water, lights in the water and up in the air. And then they realized that this object emerged right next to the trawler, shot up to about 1,000 feet or so, illuminated the trawler, and then it came over and then hovered right over top of this Navy ship, the Recovery, before departing straight up, stopping, making instantaneous 90-degree turn, and then shooting off. All of the Navy ship's electrical, the compasses, all of the electronics, the engines, everything died. In fact, they couldn't even repair it. They had to be towed back into port because the ship was completely dead in the water. So,
wow.
Yeah.
And Matt, some of these that you're describing, like, I'm trying to put my mind, like, if I was a seaman out there, that sounds terrifying, man. I mean, like, one, they're playing with you. Two, this massive thing that's hovering around under the water comes up and is illuminating the deck and everything else. I'm thinking to myself, that's like traumatizing if you're out there.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so I have one last one that's kind of two, because there's two that are related, kind of like the Cuban MiG with the radar contacts. But I'll try to get through this one pretty quickly. So I investigated this case. This was case number 138123, and it involved a Navy destroyer called the USS W.S. Sims. And this was July 1st, 1971. And we're going back to the same area, about 200 miles off of Jacksonville, Florida, in the Atlantic Ocean. So it was reported by a U.S. Navy radarman who was first class on the frigate. He was on radar watch. At 2 o'clock in the morning, he tracked these three targets on radar in a triangle formation, heading straight for the ship. Now, the radar scope that he was using had about a 50-mile range on it, and he tracked these three lights heading right for the ship until they merged with the ship, where they were right over top of the ship. It took, let's see, he said 60 to 90 seconds. So if you do the math on that, for depending on anywhere from 60 to 90 seconds, that would be anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 miles per hour, and then stopping on a dime. And again, I go back to, at the time, the fastest plane that we had was the SR-71, and it might be able to achieve close to those speeds, but it definitely can't stop on a dime, and it can't hover.
And there's no sonic booms or nothing, because there's no way any traditional craft could get away with doing that. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. So this destroyer, the reason why they were out there was they had just had a new sonar installed on the ship, and they were doing sonar trials with a diesel electric submarine. And so basically the submarine would dive and then try to hide from them, and then the ship would find them with the new sonar. So the diesel electric submarine, the way that diesel electric works, unlike nuclear-powered submarines, is that when they're underwater, they're on batteries, but the batteries lose their energy, so they have to pop up, switch over to the diesel engines to charge the battery. And that's what this sub was doing at the time. It was surfaced, the conning tower was up, and they were about a mile away from the ship. So these lights, they hung out over top of the USS Sims, and then moved over, and then hovered on top of the submarine for about 3 minutes, and then shot off to the north. The story doesn't end there, because when I was doing research for this case, I looked for similar cases around the same time, and lo and behold, I found one. This is Newfork. For those that aren't familiar with that, that's the National UFO Reporting Center run by Peter Davenport. There's a Newfork report on the same day, July 2nd, 1971. Same exact location, but this one involved the USS John F. Kennedy, CVA 67, and they had a 200-foot diameter glowing sphere hover for about 20 minutes right over the top of the flight deck. It shut everything on the ship off. They had two ready alert F4 Phantoms that were on deck, ready to take off, and it shut those things down. And it's pretty incredible. And finally the thing left, but I wanted to read this. Pardon me. What the skipper had to say. Well, first of all, they went back to Norfolk, Virginia, which was their home port. On their way back, they had a helicopter that landed, and 3 or 4 men in trench coats boarded the ship. We can all, kind of surmise what happened. And then right before they pulled into port, the skipper got on to the 1MC or the closed circuit TV and told the crew. And I'll read this. This is a quote. "I would like to remind the crew that certain events that take place aboard a naval combat ship are classified and are not to be discussed with anyone without a need to know." And, but thankfully, this gentleman, his name is Jim Kampf, he made this report to National UFO Reporting Center, and we were able to correlate these two events that, they're quite possibly related.
Yeah. Hi, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Now, let's get back to the show. That I was going to say that had to be exciting to find a correlating event. That's cool. Yeah.
I was going to ask you, is that the case where you went back to try to find the data logs?
It absolutely is. So, being in the Coast Guard, when I first came into the Coast Guard, I served on a Coast Guard cutter that was, it was the Coast Guard cutter Cherokee. It was an old ocean-going tug. I spent about a year on it before I got into aviation and helicopters. And, the keel on this old ship was, it was, laid back in the 1930s. So this thing was really, really old. And they used it for target practice over the Puerto Rican Trench. So it's in 3,000 feet of water now. But I was doing some research on it, and I was going through the National Archives a few years ago, and so I realized there's all of these ship's logs that are on National Archives website, and then the physical logs are kept in College Park, Maryland. So I thought, oh man, I'm going to go back and find the deck logs for the USS W.S. Sims, and then also the John F. Kennedy. They're not there. And then I wrote to one of the historians, and they wrote an email back saying, "Oh yeah, all those records are unavailable because the VA is in the process of doing asbestos claims, and those records are offline for that." And it's like, really?
Sure.
And that was years ago, a couple of years ago, and I checked, a couple of days ago, they're still not available. So
It probably takes about 30 years to do that asbestos stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'm going to take a break, and then I'll let Rusty talk about some of her pretty incredible cases. I know there's one that I'm just fascinated. I can't wait to hear it.
Well, first of all, this is a experiencer resource team case, okay? And for people who don't understand what that is, it's a group in MUFON where we take reports of abduction and direct contact with beings, and we don't really investigate them. We listen to them and give them guidance, and sometimes they don't really want help afterwards, like getting regression or therapy. We can give them that information, but what they really like is just to tell somebody their story. So this case came through to me on November 6th of 2025. And the people, their names are Tom and Dixie Rosetta. They said I could use her name because they're not going to be quiet about this. This was, I'm going to call this story The Encounter at Row 5, High Strangeness at the Hard Rock Casino, Tampa. So it's 7 o'clock at night, and they're waiting for their dinner reservations at the Italian restaurant there. And about row 5 away from the restaurant, while they're waiting, Tom notices this thing. He kept calling it an it, and he's looking at it, and it's over about 7 foot tall, a very long neck, long arms, long hands, bright red lipstick, platinum blonde hair, just staring at the slot machine like a robot with its eyes blinking every now and then, and just maybe a turn would be very mechanical, like a robot. And he stared at it on and off for about 5 full minutes, and then decided, okay, I'm going to go over to my wife. She was right by the restaurant near there at a slot machine. He was kind of walking around. And he walked up to her and said, "Look at that over there. Look at that." And she turned and she said, "Look at that neck." She couldn't believe how long the neck was. And so they both at that moment thought that maybe the casino put a robot there. It was a week after Halloween. Maybe it was just some kind of a scary thing that they were doing in the casino that night. Well, they continued to on and off look at it, and it would look at them, but mostly it was really interested in the slot machine, just staring. And sometimes it would drop its hands down to the ground and then drop its head down and look down for a while, but then come back up and look at the slot machine, not really ever blinking, but just every now and then. And so they would turn away, and then they would turn back, and it would be at another slot machine, maybe in row 4 or row 6. It would be there, but they never saw it get up. And so this went on for quite a while. They finally got their dinner reservations, and they were like, wow, maybe we shouldn't go to dinner. They kind of wanted to see it still. They had no idea. Nobody else around was noticing this thing. So they go into the restaurant, and they sat down, and about 5 minutes later, Dixie said, "I'm going to the bathroom." But Tom said, "I knew she wasn't." She did go to the bathroom, but she walked right up to it. And it was kind of crouched down at this point. And she kind of crouched down and looked up at it and said, "Are you real?" And it looked at her and it said, "Yes, I am," with the lips not really moving. So she's pretty sure it was telepathy with her and this being. And she said she noticed its beautiful ivory skin and the red lips. And she said, you're beautiful. You've got the most beautiful skin." And she was adoring this being, or whatever it was at this point. She knew it wasn't a joke anymore. Yeah. Well, she went to the bathroom, went back. It was still there. And now we're about an hour in. They're eating their food real fast because they want to go back out and see if this is still there. They kept calling it an it. They are 78, 80 years old, these people as well. So it's not like they're sitting on having a bender either. You know, some people say, you know, you see this stuff because you're on a bender, but they were not. So they come back out. It's gone. They looked all over for it, and they didn't see it anymore. So then he says, "Well, now I want to tell you something before we hang up." He goes, "I wasn't going to tell you, but I will now." And I said, "What?" And he said, "Well, I'm retired military." He said, "I was in the military for about 30 years and then did 10 years with a military. I was a civilian contractor working for something like Lockheed Martin," I think he said. But he said that he worked on shadow government. He's a lieutenant colonel, retired Army, worked in the White House underneath Reagan, Bush, and then Clinton. And his job was basically emergency management. He knew all the tunnels under the White House. He told me a lot of his military stories. And so then he said, I just felt like I should tell you that. And he said, it's not the first time I've seen something. And then
Really?
I said, okay. And he goes, but I have a 40-year disclosure. I can't talk about it. He said, but I will someday. And he said, but I knew that the story needed to get out, and I'm not afraid to tell this story because I'm not in the military anymore. So that's really it with this story. It's just so interesting. Here's another twist, though. I have a friend that was the manager, head of security there about a year and a half ago that retired. I called him up. He knows that I'm very interested in this. And so he didn't laugh at me. But I said, is there any way that you could contact your friends that still work there in security? And he said he would, but of course nothing ever came of it. The security there is very tight because it's the Seminole Indians. They have their own police there and security. So it's not like they can give any information out. But Tom and Dixie both said that was meant for them to be the only ones to see it. He said nobody else saw it purposely. It was meant for them only.
Wow. That's interesting.
So, interesting story there.
That is.
And I have a rendering, an AI rendering that they approved. Matt, can you show that?
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that is an amazing story.
It is, because you get these things and you think, okay, that's enough to giggle about. But this was no joke. I talked to them like 3 or 4 days after that this happened to them, and they were both, I want to tell her first. I want to tell her first. And then I also talked to them another time, and their story never changed at all. Just a few more little details were added in that I might have forgotten about. But it's an amazing story, and he said I could use their names and everything. So,
well, you got 2 for 1 there too, because he told you about the other stuff, and you've got a return guy. Because when that 40 years is up, you're probably already figured out when that is. You've got more information. That's cool.
Yeah. Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
That stuff right there is the type of information that, like, especially for them, right? Like, this is just clearly they know what that was.
They know what it was.
Yeah.
And, there's other people playing at the slot machines, and really they're just doing their own thing, and nobody noticed it. One interesting thing as well with this, there's a book called Millennial Hospitality, and it was written by a military man. There's several of them in a series. After he wrote these books, he came and said, this all really happened. But basically in some of those books, they talked about the aliens in Las Vegas that would go into the casinos with like colonels of the military and stuff, and go to the casinos with them. Like they had a relationship. This guy swears that his books are real. He wrote it and then came out with it and said it was real. So that was interesting. I ended up getting the book from the library because Matt told me about it. And I had no idea that aliens like casinos, but for some reason they do. Also, I went to the casino a few nights later, okay, after I talked to them. And that place was ridiculous. I've never been in a casino like that. I barely could find my way around in that place. I looked everywhere, went to where they were at. I wasn't so lucky. I did bring an EMF reader and pulled it out, and my husband said, Rusty, we're going to get kicked out of here. You can't have a machine like that in here. And I said, yeah, you're right. So I put it back in my purse. But also I realized that the EMFs were going to really be pulling from those machines anyway, so it wouldn't have done any good.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
They probably thought you were using it to count cards or something crazy.
Right.
You're in there
Probably.
looking for aliens.
So
one thing by itself, just the personalities you find in some of these, some of these casinos, they're extreme anyway, and so probably there are things walking right among them. People don't even realize it.
They don't realize it because all they want to do is spend their money in those stupid machines. Sorry to you guys out there, but
I'm not a better either, so I get it. Yeah, too frugal.
So that Millennial Hospitality, that was Charles James Hall, and he also did Walking with the Tall Whites, I think. Yeah. So
and there's a series of them.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. That was pretty cool. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was a recent thing that happened. I was so happy to talk to those people. They were really a nice couple, and I really enjoyed talking with them.
Yeah.
And
R-
yeah,
Rusty, I'm still traumatized by that AI generated photo of the
yeah,
being.
right. Yeah,
Oh man.
Right.
yeah. So this
Jeez.
case I'm going to talk about next is pretty interesting. This was in Treasure Island, Florida, which is on the west coast by St. Pete Beach and over that way. It's a real nice area. This guy is a pest control guy, and he bought these new cameras, trail cams, and he went out to this guy's house and hung up these new cameras all over his house so he could see how the rats were getting into his attic. Set him up there, goes back, looks at him. He doesn't see anything, but one night he did. At about 7 o'clock at night, he sees on the cameras this thing shows up. It looks like the jellyfish UFO, sort of. It's got stems on it. It's weird, okay? And he's just looking at this thing, and it was in view from about 7. It was dusk when it showed up, and about 1 in the morning it disappeared. It was always there. I wonder if it was there because of the newer cameras and light spectrums. I've been reading a lot about this, about the filters and stuff, and the way our eyes can't see something, but some cameras can. As this was there, though, there was a helicopter rising. When you show the video, you'll see something coming up from the ground. It was a Pinellas County helicopter. It was a police officer coming up. And then coming from above was a meteor right near the object. So that was kind of strange. To me, it looked like a meteor. But just for hours on end, this thing was there, and you can see it moving sometimes, not moving around, but like the stems on it were like fingers almost moving and lighting up and changing colors. So he, right in the middle of our investigation, I was asking him questions and stuff and talking to him, and he decided he was no longer going to talk to MUFON because he heard bad stuff about MUFON. And I said, oh, okay. Well, he'd already given me all the information, but unfortunately I did have to close that case with insufficient information because he wouldn't finish the story. So I was able to have the videos. We have the case. I 100% believed him. He did start some kind of a YouTube channel and put them out there. And they are on YouTube somewhere. But it was a really, really weird case.
Yeah.
And I thought that it reminded me of the jellyfish UFO. It wasn't on any of the other nights when he videoed, and it was there for hours and just disappeared.
What in the world is those jellyfish?
I don't know.
So bizarre, man. Ugh,
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. And I have one more case that doesn't have any videos, but it's an interesting case. This was in, I think it was November as well, and it was in Tampa this past November. It was over by USF College, which is very highly populated. There's a girl, she was probably, I think she said she was 25. She was on the balcony of her condo building at about midnight. And she came out and she saw a disc with lights on the bottom of it, a dome top, like the classic saucer, rising up from above the lake. There was a lake probably about half a mile from her building. And she saw it rise up, gliding very slowly. She watched it for about 2 minutes. She backed up slowly back into her condo so that she could grab her phone that she left. She came back out. She started recording. And in the sky, you can see some really weird flashes, but nothing where I would say, wow, this is something. But it was really weird how it was like little flashes of light. In the distance, you saw a helicopter take off from Advent Hospital from their helipad, and she was recording and freaking out kind of on her phone, saying, oh my God, oh my God. She was really scared. So then the next day when I got the case, I decided to look at our MADAR data. Now, this is something that we haven't talked about yet. Have you heard of MADAR?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Can you take a minute and talk about that?
MADAR is multiple anomaly detection, recording. I don't know the whole thing.
Right.
Fran Ridge, he's recently passed away. He was the founder of NICAP, right?
Yeah, NICAP.
So he created a MADAR unit, and there's quite a few of them through the United States and international. There's some too. It's a little box that you plug into your modem, and it records scientific data such as barometric pressure, electromagnetic anomalies, and a Geiger counter, right, is on there if you want to put it on there. And there's a compass thing with it. So I checked the
multi-stage assessment, basically.
Yeah. So whenever we have any kind of UFO cases that seem like, yeah, this is interesting in the area, or we can check throughout wherever there's a UFO case. You just go to MADAR website and you can access the data. You put in the node number. Mine is node number 278 here. I'm about 11 miles from that sighting as well. And at the time, right when she started recording it, I didn't have any kind of anomalies on mine. My electromagnetic usually sits at about 5.0, but exactly 1 hour later to the minute, 1 hour later, mine went up to 33.8, I think it was. So it went like crazy. So I feel like whatever this was exited our atmosphere at that time. I think something happened in the atmosphere and just took off. I've been through hours and hours of data reading for MADAR, and mine never goes that high. I'm telling you, it was really bizarre. Fran Ridge took it as one of his cases of interest. The only thing that we have a problem with was why didn't it trigger anything when she saw the sighting? I don't know, but it triggered something later, exactly 1 hour to the minute.
Interesting.
So, yeah. And
yeah. Well, and it makes you wonder, right? Like, because you hear things, maybe you guys see things where that measuring devices and stuff are impacted in a weird way with these UAP. So a person physically sees something with their eyes, but maybe they have a measuring device of some sort and it's not picking it up, or vice versa. It's picking it up, but they don't see what they don't see it all with their eyes. It's messing with us, man.
It is. It really is.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
That has a MADAR detector too.
Yeah, no, node 346. And mine, I've had several alerts on mine, but I don't have the alarm, because there's like a siren alarm that when you get a differential on the compass reading, like it sets it off. I've had like 4 or 5 alerts, and I think most of them, like, I haven't been home. Even if I was home, I couldn't run outside and look up in the sky and see what's flying over. But yeah, Fran used to send out the email, hey, your system alerted, and usually I wasn't home. So
when my alarm went off the first time, my husband says, "Now listen, I really accept what you're doing here, but I got to go to work in the morning. That thing scared the shit out of me." So I had to unplug the alarm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Let's go out and record, though. If I would have had that alarm on, I could go out and see. But yeah, so
I think it
posted out as an unknown that case.
And what is the site? It's like MADAR site.
MADAR.site, I think.
Wow, MADAR. Go ahead.
I think it's MADAR.site. Just Google MADAR, you'll find it.
Yeah, if you Google MADAR, I'm sure it'll pop up. But it's great.
You can read all these papers and everything that they wrote.
Yeah, that's cool.
And we're very fortunate because our chief investigator, Steve Foss, he and another gentleman, which I apologize, I cannot remember his name. Maybe you know Rusty, are kind of taking over for Fran since Fran passed.
Eric, I think, but I could be wrong. It's Eric.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
heard David Toon's name thrown in the race too, though, so I don't know who I get.
yeah, yeah. David again, he's our rock star
Yeah.
field investigator.
You gotta have David Toon on your show to give his feels.
Absolutely, yeah. Definitely get David Toon on. And not to spoil anything that he would potentially show you, but he's written a book called about solar technosignatures, where he has scoured tens of thousands of images from there we go from NASA and that with these orbiting solar research satellites, and some of the images that he has found are just absolutely incredible. So
That's really cool.
Okay, I'll
yeah.
have to remember his name. Yeah, that is cool. Yeah, jeez. So many things.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Well, Matt, do you want to talk about the other cases that you have for Florida?
Yeah, so let me get into some spheres.
Okay.
Everybody loves a good sphere story. So let's see. So everybody, I don't know if everybody has heard, but about the Betz mystery sphere. I mean, that was back in 1974, Fort George Island, up near Jacksonville. There was a couple, the Betzes. They found this 8-inch diameter, 22-pound kind of chrome sphere on the ground. They found it after a forest fire had gone through there. And so they brought it home, and when they got it home, this thing kind of had a life of its own. It would roll around their house, and it was just really bizarre. I think the U.S. Navy finally, they called the Navy, so the Navy took it, did an investigation, and came back and just said, "Oh, well, this is just a standard stainless steel, sphere. Nothing really remarkable about it." But then when they got it back, it didn't roll around on its own anymore. So I don't know if they swapped it out or what. Yeah, but that's called the Betz, Betz Mystery Sphere, 1974. And then, of course, in more modern times, we have the 2016, the Mosul Orb, which I'm sure a lot of your viewers have seen the video of that over Mosul, Iraq. And then more recently, there's the Booga Sphere from Colombia that's getting a lot of attention, and I'm still on the fence with that. I mean, it's I know Jesse Michaels did took a look at it, and there's been some research that have been looking into it. So I think that would be awesome if that is real. That's a really cool, because there's a video associated with it. And then just today, I was just going through Reddit, looking at UFO stuff like I normally do, and now there's a new one called the Dread Sphere, and it's a gentleman out in San Diego a couple of weeks ago that was live streaming on TikTok, and there was this orb that was hovering over his area, and for about a half hour he was zapping this thing with a green laser, and it finally dropped to the ground, and he ran over and picked it up. He took it home, and he's got these videos of it like doing high-speed spins on his wooden floors, and I'm by no means am I endorsing it, because there is a lot of tomfoolery out there, and so but it's interesting, and it's worth a look.
The thing I think of, Matt, is radioactivity or something like that. Like you grab this thing and you wind up hurting yourself.
And the military haven't showed up at his door yet to get it.
Right?
I don't know. I mean, it's
interesting.
Check it out for yourself. It's bizarre, but it makes me wonder. Dr. Gary Nolan, he was recruited by I guess it was the CIA, the Department of Defense, now Department of War, but this was years ago, to look into Havana-like syndrome. He was looking into that whole thing, but then there was also a branch off of that for pilots and military personnel that had been gotten too close to UAP and then had the same Havana syndrome like symptoms. So, not to mention like all of the cases where people have had, look at the Cash Landrum, case, back in Texas where, all the people in the car were radiated. I think they're all dead from cancer, from exposure to this stuff. So yeah, I definitely don't think I'd, you're really taking a chance going out and grabbing something that you have no idea, what what it's emitting. Maybe at least go get a Geiger counter and,
Right.
don't take any chances. But so anyway, yeah. So those are some of the spheres in the news, past and present. And so I'd just like to highlight a couple of Florida cases involving spheres. So the first one is, this was MUFON case number 133458. It occurred on October 31st, 2023, and it involves this witness that he lives in Clearwater, Florida, just around St. Petersburg area, and he was up on his roof trimming trees. So I guess there was a tree close to his house where he could reach over it with a saw and cut limbs off of it. And so he was taking a break, and he was looking toward the north, and he noticed this sphere. He estimated it was about 20 feet in diameter. It was it was about 500 feet off the ground, going about 100 miles an hour, heading out to the west over the water. And then a few minutes after it passed, a U.S. Air Force A-10 Warthog followed in close pursuit. And that was really the gist of the story. But, it's interesting that, a lot of these cases involve, military jets flying after these things. So, really interesting. The next sphere case that we have, this was investigated by one of our field investigators. His name is Jay Desane. And this was probably one of the first cases he did. He really hit the jackpot. But this is case number 134831. It took place on October 23rd. And this was down at Sarasota Bradenton International Airport. And then the IATA code for that is KSRQ. So at 4 p.m., this witness, he was at the gate. I think it was gate B3, which there's a video associated with this, and you can see the gate number. But he's sitting there at the gate waiting for his plane, and he notices this big silver ball that's like cruising along right outside the window over the ramp, kind of parallel to the runway. So he gets his video camera and starts filming it, and so you'll see that here in a second. And we did the investigation on this. It's a really incredible. Video. We turned it over to MUFON's photo analysis team, and they came back with some really interesting findings that showed that it has like an aura, like kind of around it. And then we go back to the propulsion system that we were talking about. If this had been at night, this would probably been a glowing, sphere or something. But it wasn't moving against the wind. I think it was perpendicular to the wind. Jay, the investigator, he reached out to the FAA. The guy in the tower told him that they were instructed to any inquiries like that should be directed to Robert Bigelow with Bigelow Aerospace and Advanced Space Studies, or BASS. I'm sure he was the previous owner of Skinwalker Ranch and a few other places out there. And then he also contacted the Tampa FSDA, which is the Flight Safety district office for the FAA. They had no hazards reported or anything like that. And a big giant silver chrome sphere that's floating up the runway is a pretty big deal. I mean, for runway incursions and stuff like that, if there's a flock of birds on the runway, they'll make a plane go around and come back and attempt another landing, because obviously it's such a hazard. So anything like like a big sphere that's in the airspace is pretty serious. So It's interesting that nobody in the tower saw it. No other people reported it. However, this gentleman took a video of it, and it's clear as day what this thing looks like. So that was my other sphere case, and now I'm gonna get into, this is probably one of the coolest cases over the last few years that we've investigated. The lead investigator on this case is David Toon again, and this is case number 135664, and we call it the Umatilla case, and it's great. So this happened December 5th, 2023 in Umatilla, Florida. For those who aren't familiar with that, it's kind of in the central part of the state, just I think south of Orlando, kind of near the villages, that area. But this was Umatilla, State Road 19. It's a north-south road that goes through, I mean, it's just a 10-mile stretch of straight highway with pine trees on each side. So this the witness in this case was an Air Force vet. She had her dog in the back seat of her car. She was northbound, and there was a tractor trailer in front of her, and there were several cars that were, in the oncoming lane. And at some point, she started hearing this loud screeching sound, and then her dog in the back seat just started whelping like it was in really, serious pain. About that time, her car died. And then her cell phone died. And then she noticed that, this tractor trailer truck in front of her, it had stopped dead in the road. And then there's a couple other cars that were in the southbound lane. They just came to a complete stop. Everything died. And
Whoa.
Let me tell you, I know that tractor trailer truck that was in front of her, I'm sure it was a diesel truck, and if you know anything about diesel, like once you light those things off, they stay running until you kill the fuel.
Yeah.
And so this wasn't an electrical issue. This was maybe like a time dilation or something like we talked about earlier. Who knows? It's just really weird. And then the previous case that I talked about with the jets that were on the carrier deck that shut off. It's the same thing. I mean, it's jet engines are kind of like diesel engines. As long as you're feeding it fuel, it stays lit. So some weird physics going on here. But so all these cars died in the middle of the road, and of course everybody steps out to figure out what's going on. As soon as everybody stepped out of their car, this black triangle, doing hundreds of miles an hour at extremely low altitude, whizzes by, and it's so low that it chopped off the top of one of the pine trees.
Oh.
And at that point, just a few seconds behind that, 2 U.S. Air Force F-15s in hot pursuit were following this thing. Now, I will say that it was the area that this occurred was adjacent to an area called Pine Castle Impact Range. It's a U.S. Navy bomb range. And it's really weird. It's just it's like a mile or two off of the highway. And so I don't know if maybe the fighters were out there already for that, or if they had been chasing this thing for a while and it just was a coincidence that it was in that area. But yeah, these people were really shook up. They had a couple of people were bleeding from their ears. There was one of them just sat down on the road and was just emotionally devastated over this thing. They were just really kind of scared to death. The witness had severe trembling, nausea, sweating. In fact, she had patches of white hair that appeared that hadn't been there before. So these people were really affected by something. Myself, David Toon, and another one of our investigators, Rebecca Villar, we got to the scene, I believe it was the next day, and we did an interview. We went out to try to find the site where it was. Now, keep in mind, like I said, this is a 10-mile stretch of highway with no discernible landmarks. There's just trees and road signs and that kind of stuff. So we spent several hours going back and forth to try to find the exact spot. We were looking for the tree. Specifically, we wanted to get that piece of the tree that had been chopped off. We looked and looked and looked, and we just never were able to find it. So, and I would think that if a fairly large piece of tree, and this was like a day later, I mean, it should have been there. And I couldn't help but think, going back to Cash Landrum, where, if you're not familiar with that case, it was some U.S. Army Chinook helicopters that were transporting like a sling load, this diamond-shaped craft that was like emitting like radiation, and I think it had molten material spilling out of it. Flew over this highway in Texas, and the witness that saw it, it melted the paint on her car. It melted the vinyl dash. It was pretty serious. And all of the witnesses in that case have passed from cancer. That area, within a week, the Texas Highway, Department of Public Works or whatever, had gone in and they completely resurfaced that entire highway, and essentially, got rid of all of the evidence. And I can't remember what happened to the car, but I think that somebody, maybe the government, paid for the car and then took the old one or something. I don't know. It's been a while since I've read the Cash Landrum book, but I couldn't help but think that maybe somebody's already cleaned up the evidence on this thing. But this was the Air Force veteran that was driving the car that made this report, and she was easily able to identify these two F-16s because she had spent her time in the Air Force around them for so long. So it goes back to another a credible witness, ex-military military veteran with who was a trained observer in her previous career. So just absolutely fascinating case.
That is, and I'm curious what your thought is on when you see these black triangles. They're some people say they're tech, like from black projects and stuff like that, and people seem to get sick from those. What are your thoughts? Do you have any opinions on this, or is it completely, who knows?
I don't know. What do you think, Rusty?
So some of them I think probably are ours, but then you hear the reports of them turning on their sides and flying out of our atmosphere in seconds. That can't be ours.
Yeah.
It just can't be. So I'm 50-50 on that yes, they probably are half of ours, but some of these other ones, no way.
Yeah.
No way.
Crazy.
Well, it's like David Fravor said during his congressional testimony with the House Oversight Committee a few years ago. Oh, man, has it been that long?
I know.
And he said, back in 2004 when he was describing the Tic Tac, he said, if that's our technology, then why do we need a B-21 bomber? Like, Let's just save the money. And we've already, we don't need anything other than one Tic Tac to dominate the entire world. And so either they're just being very reserved about using that technology, but I mean, I can't imagine that they would be testing that kind of stuff around the public, unless I don't know for what reason other than some kind of psychological, operation or something, but I don't know. Yeah,
it's a tough thing, well, because you get what common sense kind of tells you, and then you get the other end where you have somebody like Dr. Stephen Greer who talks about these black projects having these things since the 60s, and it's like, where's the truth in there? Because there are two massively different viewpoints on this. And there's enough evidence to go, maybe it's that or that. It's just crazy.
Matt, one thing I wanted to tell you about that case that you just talked about every couple months or so, I go on and try to find the other people that were witnesses there, and I'll go into NUFOR's, I go into ours, and I do co-pilot. I just keep putting that date in and asking, hey, anybody else report anything from that date? Because I know that one of these days, those people were so freaked out, somebody is going to report that. Yeah. Now, there are other reporting agencies that we'll never know about, like Enigma Labs and stuff. They're not an open source to ask or anything, but it's too bad that some of these reporting agencies that we can't all come together so that we can link these. We can.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Florida, what's going on down there? My gosh.
It's just crazy.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, did you guys have anything else, or do you want to talk a little bit about MUFON there in Florida?
Sure. Yeah, let's see. It's we've got our Florida MUFON members, and then we've got our Florida investigative team. And in Florida, we've got, I don't know, about 250 to 300 members. And then for our investigative team, I think we're up to 21 now, including myself and Rusty. And out of those 21, six of us are on the experiencer resource team. And like I said, the field investigators kind of take care of the nuts and bolts, and we do too. We're also field investigators, but then the experiencer team also works with experiencers. And with the experiencer cases, there may be an investigative component, a nuts and bolts component to it. But as far as us working with the experiencers, I mean, we're really just there to document what and to help these people, because once you've gone through and listened to these people's story, a lot of them are like severely traumatized. I mean, it is true PTSD that a lot of these people are going through. And a lot of them can't really come to terms with it. And the first thing that they usually say when we interview them is, "You're not going to believe this." I don't, and a lot of them will say, "I don't even believe it myself." So I mean, it's just so bizarre. But they've had such an ontological shock that they just can't wrap their heads around what's going on with them. Some people have issues with, they've told their family, they've told friends, and they've lost, lost friendships over it. Their families don't understand any of it. They don't know what to make of it. And there's people that have lost their jobs because they've come out to tell some crazy story, and now they find themselves unemployed. One experiencer that I spoke with said that when she was a teenager, she told her parents about it, and she ended up going into a psychological treatment facility for several months. So these people, this stuff is happening to them. When you talk to enough of these people, you realize there's markers that aren't necessarily advertised, that these people all kind of have the same kind of common things that have happened to them, the way they describe their abduction or contact events. Very subtle things, but when I hear the same thing over and over and over from people from all walks of life, there's no doubt in my mind that these are real events. Most of these experiencers are, very high functioning, professionals. They have their life together in all other aspects except for this, and it really haunts them. And so what the experiencer team does is we give those people an opportunity to speak with somebody who is non-judgmental, that we understand what they're talking about, because we've heard other experiencers tell us that similar stories. And we're really just there to listen to them and to help them validate what they're going through, and let them know, you're not crazy, you're not alone, and we're here to help. And then we often refer experiencers to different therapists, and that have different kind of therapies and treatments, and sometimes it involves a hypnotherapist, certified hypnotherapist, or a clinical hypnotherapist that can help them regress and remember and to deal with trauma that their brain isn't allowing them to deal with. They might have a little piece of the puzzle, but they don't have the big picture. And sometimes going to those professional, providers really means the difference.
I was going to say, I recently ran across somebody who he's an ex-military. He had experiences up until his 20s. Now he's 65. And he shared a story, and it's an apocalyptic vision of things coming. And he's kind of suppressed that. And so when I was talking to him, I asked him if he'd reached out to an ERT person or anything like that. And he says, no, I don't even know how I do that. So I turned him over to a guy in Detroit from MUFON who does this to help him with this. But he didn't know what to do before this. He was like, what do I do with this? Like, I'll tell you, but what do I do? And he went a number of years thinking he was crazy. And so, yeah, I hear what you're saying, and it's real. There's people out there. I bet a lot more people than what we think that have experienced things.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a good portion of the population that they know they have weird stuff going on. They write it off as dreams, nightmares and sleep paralysis and everything else, and they kind of, deal with it, on their own. And
Yeah,
so I suspect the vast majority of people that encounter this don't, like, they never report it.
right, right. One quick question. I do know Missouri has a underwater specialty group. Do you guys there in Florida have anything like that as well?
Yeah, we sure don't. I mean, I'm a pretty avid scuba diver, and and I had thought about joining that. It's Debbie Zingelmeyer. She's the state. I'm trying to remember what her
I think
position
she is the
is.
state director
State,
there in
state
Missouri.
director, yeah, but
Yeah.
she's also a MUFON board member, and she's the head of the MUFON dive team. And I talked to her several years ago about joining. She gave me all the application for it, and honestly, I've been so busy with MUFON, I haven't had time to
Yeah.
join.
She's on the
But
start team too, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 Uh,
What's
but
that team? What's the
The STAR
team?
team in MUFON is, I guess, an elite group. They are on the boots, on the ground with their boots. When something happens, they're ready to go. Like they will travel, get on an airplane, and go.
Wow. So
If
they're like a rapid response
Yeah,
almost.
if
yeah,
a
absolutely.
big thing happen here in our state, and we believe that they need to come now before the military gets there or something, we have to really be careful about asking them to come. And it's a bunch of, you know what, when they get here, you just got to be very careful. But they will come and they will investigate further more than what we
Yes.
could.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
I know they're in the process of kind of reworking the program, but yeah, essentially that's it's like a fast response kind of thing. So
Yeah. Well, I think it's great. And thank you for sharing some of the layers of the organization because I think people I mean, when they're facing something or they see something, that's the moment that they probably start wondering, who do I tell, and what's the best way to do it? Because unless you're into this kind of thing, some people just don't even know where to go with this. So
yeah,
hopefully,
absolutely.
this kind of information helps people see that there's layers in which to pursue sharing this information. Yeah.
One thing I want to tell you about MUFON as well is we're a 501c non-for-profit organization. And if anybody wanted to join as a member, what's really cool about that is they can go into the last 20 reports every day and see videos and pictures and read the last reports, especially if they have seen something in their life and they want to see, maybe did somebody else see what I saw, they can start looking through that log there and see it.
That's cool.
And that's really cool. That's one of the reasons why I joined, is I wanted to see those reports. And
Yeah.
also, at the last week of August, we're going to be having our international symposium, and it's going to be in Cincinnati, Ohio. Wait, I take that back. It's Covington,
Yeah.
Kentucky, right across the river, but they're right there.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, last weekend of August.
Okay. And
Yeah,
is that
what is
open to general public
Yeah,
or
any
MUFON
well,
members?
absolutely.
ticket
Yep.
for the
Yeah.
weekend. It'll be a speaker-packed weekend. If you buy the ticket, that includes lunches. It's a really great weekend. A lot of great speakers. This
Hmm.
year, I think Peter Robbins, is he going to be our
Yeah, he's the keynote.
speaker? Peter
Yeah,
Robbins, do you know who he is?
That name sounds
Yeah,
familiar,
he
but
was the assistant to Bud Hopkins. Is that correct, Matt?
I believe so. Yeah.
And he's
interesting.
been a ufologist for lifetime.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I keep telling my wife, as soon as we retire, I want to hit a lot of these places. I want to go on circuit to do a lot of these different events
Yeah.
because
There's so many of them. I mean, you got Contact in the Desert. You got, all of, Alien Con. And I mean, it's, you could just spend every month going to a UFO convention, I think.
yeah,
You could.
yeah.
My husband says, "Do you want to go on like this European cruise?" And I'm like, "Nope. I'd rather go to UFO conferences all over."
Right?
Yeah, right. I'm not going to that.
Right.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So
Yeah.
I do want to mention, so for people that would like to join MUFON, you go to www.mufon.com and hit the join tab. If you see a UFO and you want to report it, it's the same website address, mufon.com, and then you can either hit report a UFO, or you can hit the tab that says report an abduction. And then that will get farmed. It doesn't matter where you are in the country. It's all based off of where the event happened, and then if it happened in Florida and you live in Idaho, we'll get the case in here in Florida. So yeah, and then also with the symposium, I think tickets for that go on sale March 1st. So after March 1st, if you go to MUFON.com, there should be a tab for the symposium where you can make reservations for it. And it is a fantastic time, like Rusty said. I highly recommend it.
And then they have discounted hotel stays. It's going to be at the Marriott River Center. It's a really nice hotel. And if you book it right through the MUFON Symposium website, you get a discount.
Excellent. Well, there you go, people. You have a connection to get some of this, and how to get this information right from, somebody on stage talking about these things, getting the most current information, or whatever's in the database, where the average person doesn't have access to that. So this is really very cool. Well, I appreciate the time you guys have spent with me tonight here. Thank you really for spending some time and sharing.
Oh, thank you for having us, Tony. We had a blast.
Yeah.
It was great. I may keep you on the line, but I want to just say, hopefully we can catch up in the future and share some more of these things. But
Yeah,
until
absolutely.
then, everybody keep your eyes up in the sky. Remember, there's a lot of strange and unexpected in our reality. So always keep your eyes, ears, and minds open. And until next time, stay safe. Hi, we need your help to get bigger and better. How? Just like, comment, and subscribe. It's free, and it just takes a few seconds. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to High Strangeness. This was a glance at some of the strange that exists in our reality.